Hi, I'm Walaber, the creator of JellyCar Worlds, which has now been out for over a year, if you can believe it. And there's been quite a few updates to the game over that time. But today I'm going to tell you about perhaps the most ambitious update to the game so far. So welcome to yet another devlog for JellyCar Worlds, and let's jump right in. The big update this time around is two-player modes. And not two-player mode, but two-player modes, because there's actually two different ways you can play two-player in the new update. So let's dive right in and take a look at them. The first and most simple is two-player race rush. This is racing through levels from the World's Adventure in split-screen two-player mode. You can see here that we have different rushes you can select, and each rush is basically a set of 5-7 levels that you will race through in order, trying to touch the stop sign first. As you can see here, I have two controllers connected to my computer, and so each player can then select their car. They can even select their car designs. So it's probably time to mention that on the different platforms, you are going to need multiple input devices to play the two-player modes. On your iPhone or your iPad, you're going to need to connect two wireless controllers. You can connect PlayStation controllers, you can connect made for iPhone controllers, and all the controllers that are supported will work. But you will need two controllers connected to the device because you got two players playing the game. Of course, on Apple TV, same thing, connect to. On PC platforms, you do have an option where you could have one player using a controller and one player using the keyboard. So if you only have one controller and you're on the Steam version or the Mac OS version of the game, that's one way that you could potentially play as well. Of course, on Nintendo Switch, you can just connect two Joy-Cons or two Pro Controllers or any combination of those things. Okay, and here's what it looks like in split screen mode. So one player is on the right-hand side of the screen, and the other player is on the left-hand side of the screen. And you don't collide with each other. So you can see here, you can just sort of drive right through each other, but you are in the same level. So if the first player, for example, knocks down this bridge, then the second player can pass by and that bridge is already knocked down. So this is racing to get to the stop sign fastest. Whoever can get there first gets that level as a win. And then at the end, after you've completed all the levels, you get a recap to see which player won the most levels. When I came up with the idea of adding two-player mode to the game, I was pretty sure that this mode would be pretty easy to implement, right? I just need to technically get two cars working with two controllers connected. This actually turned out to be a bit more complicated from a design point of view than I'd expected. The main reason turns out to be the level design. I had thought, well, you know, most of these levels, as long as we don't let you collide with each other, you can play through them, and I'll be able to include almost every level in the game. In fact, my original intention was just to have a big level select screen and let players choose any level they wanted from the world's adventure and race that level. But in practice, it turns out that actually many levels, including the one we're looking at right now, had issues which caused problems with two-player. If you remember, this level has like this C-shaped platform that you go in and you grow and press a button, and then that carries you up. And that was an example of something where whoever got there first could essentially take the platform away, and the player left behind had nothing that they could do about it, and they would get stuck. Turned out, actually, that there were quite a few levels with this kind of thing in it. And so one of the reasons that you choose a specific rush set with specific levels curated is so that I could make sure I selected levels that actually work properly and are fun to race in two-player race mode. There were, however, some levels like the one I just showed here that are really fun levels, except for one little annoying aspect of the level that made them no fun to play in two-player race mode. And so for those levels, I actually went ahead and took the time to make variants of those levels. So when you play the level in race mode, you essentially get the same level, but with a few minor tweaks that allow it to be interesting or possible to race through. There were a few other design surprises when I went to implement this mode. Some that may seem obvious and are in hindsight, but I hadn't actually thought about ahead of time. A simple example is abilities. Normally the way abilities work in the game is when you touch them, they disappear for a little while, only to reappear later so you can recollect them again. This causes a problem in two-player because if one player touches a power-up just a fraction of a second before the other player, they would claim that power-up, and then the other player would be stuck and have to wait for the power-up to respawn. I solved this problem by making sure that there's actually a copy of each power-up per player. So player 1 can collect the power-up, and there's still one sitting there for player 2 to collect. And there we go. Player 1 wins. You can see in my little demo here, because I was only playing as player 1, I won all 5 levels here. But of course, hopefully when you play it for real, it'll be a little bit more close and exciting than that. Okay, that's two-player Race Rush, which is the first of two-player modes that are added into this update. Let's go look at the other one. And the other one, which I'm really excited about, is Co-op World. And here we are in a brand new full world added to the game, designed to be played entirely in two-player co-op. And not just co-op, but same screen co-op. You can see actually that the cars are connected with a chain, so we can't get too far apart. That both helps make sure that we can have a single shared view that doesn't need to zoom out a mile apart if two cars drive off to different parts of the levels. But it also adds some interesting gameplay because we are connected with the chain and we can use the physics of the chain to help us progress through the levels. So here we are in our first co-op level. As you can see, the cars are connected with the chain and we have to drive through and work together and figure out how to progress through the level connected together with this limitation that we can't get too far apart. But we can do interesting things. So, for example, one player could touch this button, the other player could go up to the top here, this player can drive across, and then the other player can catch on with the sticky tires, for example. I'm really happy with how the levels turned out. There's a lot of variety in the levels that you'll play as you go through the co-op world. Not every level, in fact, has the players connected with a rope, but there's always some way to keep them from getting too far apart, so you're in a nice shared view with interesting gameplay mechanics throughout. One thing to mention is that this does kind of serve as like a recap world. Almost all the mechanics in the game are used in these levels. So if you haven't played through the world's adventure yet, I would recommend playing through that first, or at least one player of the two players who are going to play this might want to be familiar with the game so they understand all the game mechanics. And just like every other world in the game, not only are there 8 levels, which all feature secret exits and also customization items to find and unlock, but there's also challenges. And this presented me with something fun, which is that normally in the levels there's a beat the clock challenge, which of course I just set a time for. That's kind of a little bit of a challenge to beat the level that quickly. And a beat the dev challenge, which is unique because there's a ghost replay of me playing the game and you have to try and race me and beat me to the stop sign. But this is a 2-player world, so how do I do beat the dev challenges? Well, that's where having kids comes in handy because you'll be racing against not only me, but one of my kids in every level. So here you can see we've got Walaber the dev and also Walaber's daughter in this level. Or in this level where it's me and my son who you'll be racing against. So that was really fun to actually take some time with my kids and record these ghost replays for you to race against. Of course, no world of the game would be complete without a few other final details, such as a skull level. If you have someone you can play with who's pretty good at JellyCar Worlds, please give this level a try. I think it turned out really cool. It's not quite as difficult as the single-player skull levels, but it is still quite difficult, and definitely a big accomplishment if you can complete it. Something people often ask me about in the game is how do you get these other car shapes? And I sort of purposely left it a little bit a secret in the game as to how you find these car shapes. But you may notice that there is now an additional car shape added to the game. In fact, there's one for every world in the game. So perhaps that gives you a bit of a clue. There's a secret in each world in the game that leads to unlocking a car shape. Let me also just mention that this particular car shape I added this time is particularly silly and was something that was actually in JellyCar 2. It's a car that looks like a car, but when it inflates, becomes a big giant bouncy face. One thing to mention about these car shapes that comes up from time to time is that some levels are not easily completable or are impossible to complete with some of these car shapes. And let me just tell you right now, that is intentional. Basically, I came up with these new car designs, and when I added them into the game, that issue occurred. I made a fun car shape, I added it in, and some levels, maybe the car was too big and couldn't fit through a gap, something like that, were no longer possible to complete with the cars. And I was at a designer's crossroads there, where I could either say, no, every level in the game must be completable with every car design, that is my promise to the players, and it's important to me, and so I will make the cars fit in each level. Or I could say, you know what? These cars are a fun bonus. I'd rather them be more joyful and silly and different, and if a few levels aren't possible along the way, so be it. Hopefully you can tell I chose the second option. So particularly this train car, for example, but this new one as well, because of the way it inflates into no longer a car, actually makes several levels that use the grow power-up basically impossible with this car. Although if you want to take up that challenge, feel free. I'm sure some players will find a way. And so here we are. The 2-player update for JellyCar Worlds is now live. This is my biggest and most ambitious update to the game so far, and kind of represents the culmination of my major update plans for the game. We added in World 7, World 8, a level editor, classic levels from JellyCars 1, 2, and 3, and now multiple 2-player modes into the game. And after this point, looking forward, the updates are going to slow down a little bit. I'm excited that I'm going to start working on some new Walaber games. In fact, I've already started working on one. Here's a quick preview of it. Yep. And I want to start other new games as well, so my focus will start to shift to new projects. But that doesn't mean I'm done updating JellyCar Worlds. My plan moving forward is to shift the focus from things I'm adding to the game to instead celebrating things the community has made with the game. So the next update for JellyCar Worlds, I intend to add a community showcase to the game, where I will include levels created by you, players of the game, right into the game for everyone to play, and I will do regular updates to add more and more community-made levels into the game to showcase them. So if you're interested in that, if you've made some great levels using the in-game level editor, please consider joining my Discord, which is where I will be managing finding and curating and selecting those levels to be included into the future community showcase. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for spending over a year with me updating JellyCar Worlds and finally culminating in the addition of 2-player modes into the game. I'll be back in the future to talk more about that community showcase, and of course, keep an eye out for new games I'm working on. For now, feel free to subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.